I'm going to tell you about the day I buried my wife and discovered I never really knew her at all. About how grief and betrayal can exist in the same moment and tear you apart in ways you didn't know were possible. But first, I need to tell you about who I thought she was, about the life I thought we'd built together, so you can understand why learning the truth felt like losing her all over again. My name is David, and I'm 38 years old, or I was 38 when this happened 6 months ago. I'm a high school history teacher, and I'd been married to my wife Elena for 12 years. We met when I was 24 and she was 23. I was student teaching and she was a nurse at the hospital near the school. We met at a coffee shop that we both frequented in the mornings before work. She had the most beautiful smile and these warm brown eyes that just drew you in. I worked up the courage to talk to her after seeing her there for weeks. Asked if I could buy her coffee. She said yes, and we talked for an hour, both of us late to work that day, but not caring. We exchanged numbers and went on a real date that weekend. Within 6 months, we were inseparable. Within a year, we moved in together. 2 years after that, I proposed, and she said yes, without hesitation. Our wedding was small and beautiful. We didn't have a lot of money, but we didn't need it. We had each other, and that felt like enough. We honeymooned in a cabin in the mountains for a week, and it was perfect. Coming home to our little apartment and starting our married life felt like the beginning of everything I'd ever wanted. The years that followed were good, really good, I thought. We both worked hard at our jobs, but always made time for each other. Date nights every Friday, Sunday morning, breakfasts in bed. We had our routines and our inside jokes and our shared dreams. We talked about having kids someday, but Elena always wanted to wait a bit longer. She said she wanted to advance in her nursing career first, wanted us to be more financially stable. It made sense, so I didn't push. Elena worked at the hospital, and her schedule was unpredictable. She'd work day shifts, night shifts, weekends. Sometimes she'd be on call and have to leave in the middle of the night. It was hard, but I understood. Healthcare workers don't get regular schedules. I supported her career completely. I was proud of the work she did, saving lives, helping people in their most vulnerable moments. About 3 years ago, Elena got promoted to a supervisory role in the emergency department. It was a big deal, and I was so proud of her. But it also meant even more irregular hours. She'd have to cover shifts when they were short-staffed. She'd have meetings and training sessions that kept her at the hospital late. Sometimes she'd be gone for stretches of 12 or 14 hours. I missed her, but I understood this was her career. This was important to her. And when we were together, she was present and loving. She'd come home exhausted and I'd have dinner ready. We'd curl up on the couch and watch TV. She'd tell me about her day, about the patients she'd helped, about the challenges of managing a team. It all seemed so normal, so real. Looking back now, I can see things I missed. The way she was always on her phone, texting someone from work. The way she'd step out of the room to take certain calls. The overnight shifts that seemed to happen more and more frequently. The weekends where she had to go in for emergencies. But at the time, I just thought she was dedicated to her job. I thought I was married to someone passionate about her career. We'd been talking more seriously about starting a family. I was ready, had been ready for years. Elena kept saying soon, just a little longer. She wanted to get through this next training or that next project. I was patient. I loved her and I wanted her to feel ready to. 3 weeks ago, Elena left for work on a Tuesday morning. It was a normal day. She kissed me goodbye, told me she loved me, said she'd be home around 6. I went to school, taught my classes, graded papers. Around 4 in the afternoon, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. It was a police officer. There had been an accident. Elena's car had been hit by a drunk driver who ran a red light. They had rushed her to the hospital where she worked, but the injuries were too severe. She died before I could get there. I don't remember much of the next few days. It's all a blur of phone calls and funeral arrangements and people bringing food and saying they were sorry. My parents came into town. Elena's parents flew in from across the country. Our friends rallied around us. Everyone kept telling me how sorry they were, how Elena was an amazing person, how unfair this was. I felt like I was underwater, like everything was happening to someone else and I was just watching from a distance. The woman I loved, my partner, my best friend, was gone just like that. One moment she was kissing me goodbye and the next she was gone forever. The funeral was planned for Saturday, 5 days after the accident. We held it at a large church because Elena knew so many people from work in our community. I expected a good turnout, but I wasn't prepared for how many people showed up. Hundreds of people. Co-workers, former patients, and their families. Friends, neighbors. The church was packed. I stood at the front, greeting people as they came through the receiving line. Everyone had something kind to say. Everyone had a memory to share. Person after person told me how much Elena had meant to them, how she'd helped them or their loved ones, how the world was dimmer without her light in it. I was holding it together, barely, when I noticed a man standing off to the side. He was probably in his early 40s, tall, well-dressed in a dark suit. But what struck me was how devastated he looked. He was crying, not quietly, but openly sobbing. He kept staring at Elena's photo on the memorial display. I watched him for a few minutes. I didn't recognize him. I figured he must be someone from the hospital, maybe a doctor she worked with, or a patient's family member she'd helped. His grief was so raw, so visible, that I felt bad for him, even in the midst of my own pain. After the receiving line ended and people started taking their seats for the service, the man approached me. His eyes were red and swollen from crying. He looked like he hadn't slept in days. He said, "Are you David?" I said, "Yes." He looked at me for a long moment and then said, "I'm so sorry for your loss. I know this is the worst possible time, but I need to talk to you." After the service, please, it's important. Something about the way he said it made my stomach drop, but I nodded. After the service, I told him, the funeral was beautiful and terrible. People spoke about Elena, about her kindness and dedication and bright spirit. Her best friend from nursing school gave a eulogy that made everyone cry. Her father spoke about what an amazing daughter she'd been. I was supposed to speak to, but when I got up to the microphone, I couldn't have just stood there looking at a casket and I couldn't have made words come out. My brother came up and led me back to my seat. The service continued. We buried her in a cemetery near where she grew up. I stood there watching them lower her casket into the ground and I felt like I was being buried with her. After the burial, there was a reception at a restaurant nearby. More people, more condolences, more stories about Elena. I was exhausted and numb and just wanted everyone to leave so I could fall apart in private. I'd forgotten about the man from earlier until I saw him standing near the exit, clearly waiting for me. When most of the crowd had cleared, he approached me again. "Can we talk somewhere private?" he asked. We went outside to a quiet corner of the parking lot. He seemed nervous, kept rubbing his hands together. "My name is Michael," he said, "and I don't know how to say this, so I'm just going to say it. Elena and I were together. We were in a relationship for almost 4 years." I stared at him. I must have heard wrong. The grief was making me confused. That couldn't be what he said. "What?" I managed to say. He pulled out his phone and showed me photos. Elena and him together at restaurants, on what looked like vacations, in what appeared to be an apartment I had never seen. Photos that were clearly romantic, clearly intimate. Dates on the photos going back years. "I don't understand," I said. "Elena was my wife. We were married for 12 years. "I know," Michael said, and he was crying again. "I know. She told me about you. But she said your marriage was over in everything but name, that you were more like roommates, that she was going to ask for a divorce but was waiting for the right time. That's not true. Our marriage was fine. We were happy," he shook his head. "She told me you barely spent time together, that you'd grown apart, that she'd tried to make it work, but you were too different. We spent time together all the time. Every Friday, we had date night. Every Sunday, we had breakfast in bed. We talked about starting a family." Michael looked stricken. "She told me she didn't want kids. She said that was one of the reasons your marriage didn't work, that you wanted different things. I felt like I couldn't breathe. She wanted kids. We talked about it all the time. She just wanted to wait until her career was more stable." Michael sat down on a bench like his legs couldn't hold him anymore. "All of those nights she told me she was working late or covering shifts. She was with you." "No," I said. "All those nights she was supposedly with you, she was working, she was at the hospital." He looked at me with devastation in his eyes. "David, Elena didn't work night shifts anymore. She hadn't for 2 years. When she got promoted to supervisor, she went to a regular schedule, Monday through Friday, 8 to 5. That can't be right. She worked irregular hours. She'd come home exhausted from overnight shifts. She'd get called in for emergencies." Michael pulled up text messages between him and Elena, showed me dozens of exchanges where she talked about being with me, where she said she was staying over at my place, where she made plans for their next date or trip. My mind was racing. If she wasn't working all those nights, where was she? And then it hit me. She was with him all those late nights, all those overnight shifts, all those weekends. She was supposedly at the hospital. She was with Michael. "How did you two meet?" I asked. at a medical conference 4 years ago. We both work in healthcare. I'm a hospital administrator at a different facility. We started talking and then we just clicked. She told me she was separated, that her divorce would be final soon. We weren't separated. I didn't even know there were problems. She said you both stayed married for financial reasons but lived separate lives. I lived with her in our apartment. We shared a bed. We had dinner together. We watched TV together. We made love. That's not separate lives. Michael looked like he was going to be sick. I swear I didn't know. She showed me bank statements from accounts in just her name. She gave me an address to pick her up from. That was in your apartment. She had this whole other life set up. I thought you knew about me. I thought it was an arrangement. He showed me more evidence. Emails where Elena talked about her future with him. Text messages where she called him baby and said she loved him. Photos from trips I didn't know she'd taken. A key to his apartment that she apparently had. Proof that she'd been building an entire relationship while I thought we were happily married. Did she ever mention leaving me? I asked, because I needed to know. Was she going to tell me? Was she planning to choose him? Michael nodded slowly. She said she was going to tell you this month that she'd finally decided she wanted to be with me fully. She said she was just waiting to get through a big project at work and then she'd sit you down and ask for a divorce. I sat down on the bench next to him and we both just sat there in silence. Two men who both loved the same woman, who both thought they had a future with her, who both just lost her and were now discovering they never really knew her at all. Did you know? I finally asked. Did you know she was lying to me? No, I swear to you. No, I thought you knew about us. I thought it was complicated but consensual. I would never have been with someone who was actively deceiving their spouse. But she was actively deceiving both of us. Michael wiped his eyes. When I heard about the accident, I was destroyed. I couldn't go to work. I couldn't function. And then I realized I couldn't even grieve publicly because no one knew about us. Her family doesn't know. Her friends don't know. I'm this secret she kept, and now I can't even mourn her properly. Join the club, I said bitterly, because now I'm mourning a woman who apparently was planning to leave me, a wife who was living a double life. I don't even know what's real anymore. We sat there for a while longer and Michael told me more about their relationship, about the trips they'd taken, about the apartment he'd helped her furnish for when they moved in together. Every detail was like another knife in my chest. Finally, I asked, "Are you going to tell people? Her parents? Her friends?" He shook his head. "What good would it do? She's gone. Let them remember her the way they want to. But you deserve to know, because you're going to go through our things and you're going to find evidence eventually." I thought it was better coming from me. He was right. When I went home that night and started going through Elena's belongings, I found everything. A secret phone I'd never seen before with texts to Michael. Bank statements for accounts I didn't know existed. A journal where she wrote about her feelings for Michael and her frustration with having to maintain two lives. Lingerie I'd never seen her wear. Photos I'd never seen her take. I found a draft of a letter to me, dated for 2 weeks from now. It started with, "David, I need to tell you something that's going to hurt you. Our marriage isn't working and hasn't been for a long time. I've met someone else and I want to be with him. I'm sorry, but I need to ask for a divorce." She'd been planning to tell me in 2 weeks she was going to end our marriage, and I'd had no idea it was even in trouble. I found text messages where she complained to Michael about having to maintain the charade of our marriage, where she called me boring and said she felt trapped, where she said she wished she could just be with him and not have to pretend anymore. Every new discovery felt like losing her again. The woman I thought I knew, the marriage I thought we had, none of it was real. She'd been living this entire secret life while I went about my day teaching history to teenagers and planning our future together. The worst part was not being able to confront her, not being able to ask why, not being able to demand answers or closure. She was gone, and she'd taken all the explanations with her. I spent weeks going through everything, building a timeline of her deception, figuring out that pretty much every overnight shift in the last few years had been a lie, that the work conferences she'd attended had actually been trips with Michael, that the promotion party I thought she was at had actually been a romantic weekend getaway. Our friends started asking questions. Her best friend wanted to go through Elena's closet to pick out something meaningful to keep. Her sister wanted some of her jewelry. I had to make up excuses for why they couldn't come over yet, why I needed more time. Because what was I supposed to say? Your daughter, your sister, your best friend was living a double life. She was planning to leave me for another man. Everything you thought you knew about her was a lie. I couldn't do that to them. They were grieving. They'd lost someone they loved. Why take that away from them by revealing her secrets? But it meant I was alone with the truth, alone with the knowledge that I'd been betrayed by a dead woman, alone with grief that was mixed with anger and confusion and hurt. I reached out to Michael a few weeks after the funeral. We met for coffee and talked for hours. He was the only person who understood what I was going through, the only person who knew the real Elena, or at least the version of her that had existed in her secret life. We compared notes, figured out how she'd managed to keep us both in the dark. She'd told me she worked irregular hours to explain her absences. She'd told him I was a workaholic who was never home to explain why she couldn't always be available. She'd kept our finances mostly separate, claiming it was easier for taxes. So I hadn't noticed the money she was spending on her other life. She'd been meticulous in her deception. Michael was dealing with his own grief and betrayal. He'd thought they were building a future together. He'd been looking at engagement rings. He'd been ready to be stepdad to the kids he thought we'd eventually have together. Neither of us got closure. Neither of us got to confront her or ask why or get any kind of explanation. We were both just left with this gaping wound that couldn't heal properly because we couldn't process what had really happened. It's been 6 months now. 6 months since I lost my wife and discovered she wasn't who I thought she was. 6 months of trying to make sense of something that doesn't make sense. I still don't know why she did it. Why she didn't just divorce me if she was unhappy. Why she kept up the charade for years. Why she let me believe we were building a life together when she was planning to leave. I found a therapist who specializes in complicated grief. She's helping me process the fact that I'm grieving two different losses. The loss of Elena herself, the physical person who I shared my life with, and the loss of who I thought she was. The loss of the marriage I thought we had. Some days I'm angry, furious at her for lying to me for years, for making me look like a fool, for planning to leave me without warning, for dying before I could get any answers. Other days I'm just sad. Sad that she felt like she had to live two lives instead of just being honest. Sad that we couldn't fix whatever was broken between us because I didn't even know it was broken. Sad that I'll never know what she was really thinking or feeling. I told Elena's parents eventually about Michael, about the affair, about her plans to leave. They were devastated. Her mother didn't believe it at first, insisted I must be mistaken. But I showed them the evidence, and they couldn't deny it anymore. They've been grappling with it in their own way, trying to reconcile the daughter they thought they knew with the woman who was capable of such elaborate deception. It strained our relationship because part of them blames me. They think if I'd been a better husband, she wouldn't have strayed. Maybe they're right. Maybe I missed signs. Maybe I should have asked more questions. Maybe I should have noticed that the woman I fell asleep next to wasn't the woman I thought I married. But I don't think it's that simple. I think Elena made choices. She chose to start a relationship with Michael. She chose to lie to both of us. She chose to maintain two separate lives instead of being honest with either of us. I've started the process of moving on. I'm dating again, though it's hard. How do you trust someone new when the person you trusted most was lying to you for years? How do you believe anything anyone tells you? I'm trying. Taking it slow, being honest about my past and my baggage, looking for someone who values honesty as much as I do now. Michael and I still talk, sometimes. We've formed this weird friendship based on shared trauma. He's the only person who really understands what it's like to discover that someone you loved was living a lie. He's moving on left his job actually and moved to a different city for a fresh start. He said being in the same place where he and Elena had all their memories was too hard. I stayed. This is my home. My job is ease. I'm not going to let what Elena did chase me away from my life. But I did move apartments. Couldn't stay in the place we'd shared. The place where she'd lied to me every single day. I found a new place, smaller but mine, a fresh start. I don't talk about Elena much anymore. When people ask about her, I say she died in an accident, and I'm dealing with it. I don't tell them about the betrayal. I don't tell them I found out at her funeral that my marriage was a lie. What's the point? She's gone. Revealing her secrets doesn't bring her back. It doesn't give me closure. It just hurts more people who loved her. So I carry it quietly. This knowledge that the woman I married and the woman who died weren't quite the same person. That somewhere along the way, she became someone I didn't know at all. I don't know if I'll ever fully understand why she did what she did. Why she chose deception over honesty. Why she let me believe we had a future together when she was planning to leave. But I'm learning to live with not knowing. Learning to accept that some questions don't have answers. Learning that you can love someone completely and still not really know them. It's a hard lesson. One I wouldn't wish on anyone, but it's made me value honesty above everything else. Made me realize that I'd rather face an ugly truth than live in a beautiful lie. So I want to ask you something. If someone you loved died and you discovered afterward that they'd been living a double life, would you want to know? Would you rather maintain your positive memories of them or know the truth, even if it hurt? Because I go back and forth on whether finding out was better or worse than never knowing. If you lost someone you loved and then discovered at their funeral that they'd been living a secret life and planning to leave you, how would you process that? Would you tell their family and friends the truth or let them keep their positive memories? And could you ever forgive someone who betrayed you but died before you could confront them about it? I really need to hear your thoughts because I'm still trying to figure out how to move forward.